What would you do if the world judged you before you ever said a word? If your skin, your silence, your struggle were all used against you? Before we get into today's story, comment below where in the world you're watching from. And if you've ever been underestimated, this story is for you. The city lights of Houston flickered against the cold February sky as Janelle Brooks, 33, hurried across the icy parking lot of Trinity General Hospital. She clutched her coat tighter, not just against the wind, but against the weight of everything she carried: late babysitters, overdrafts, and the unspoken shame of always being the one who had to hold it all together. Janelle was a new night shift nurse, a single black mother, and she already knew people were watching her, waiting for her to stumble, to prove them right. As she clocked in the charge, nurse flagged her down, clipboard in hand. "We've got a critical intake, real high profile. His name's Dominic Halston." Janelle froze. Everyone in Texas knew that name. The Halston family wasn't just rich, they were dynasty rich. Oil fields, stadiums. Their name was on entire wings of the hospital. And now, one of them was coming in, clinging to life after a crash no one saw coming. He swerved to avoid hitting his wife. The nurse continued. She walked away without a scratch. "He's not so lucky." Minutes later, sirens screamed outside. The ER doors burst open. Paramedics wheeled in a bloodied man, early 40s, tall, still in a tuxedo, his body limp, his face covered in glass cuts. Behind them trailed Camille Halston, the wife, impeccably dressed, perfect makeup except for the streaks of tears. Janelle could feel the air change as Camille stormed in like royalty. "He needs the best. I want specialists from New York. Private suite. No excuses." Her voice cracked, but her presence was steel. And when Janelle stepped into the ICU hours later to check vitals, Camille's eyes landed on her. She scanned Janelle's natural curls, her dark scrubs, and the cheap watch her son had gifted her last Christmas. "Are you qualified?" Camille asked, her voice slicing like glass. Janelle straightened her spine. "Yes, ma'am. I graduated top of my class. I've got this." But what Camille didn't know was that this nurse, the one they whispered about, was about to change everything. Not just for Dominic Halston, but for an entire legacy. By sunrise, Dominic Halston III, heir to the Halston Empire, was no longer the man in the magazines. The sharp-suited mogul who once closed billion-dollar oil deals with a handshake now lay silent in the ICU. His chest rose and fell with the soft hum of machines. A breathing tube muffled the voice that used to command boardrooms. He wasn't the Empire anymore. He was a patient. Just another name on a vitals chart. But Janelle didn't see a Halston. She saw a man, a life, a soul in limbo. Each night she checked his IVs, noted the swelling in his brain, adjusted the oxygen levels. Her hands moved with practiced grace, but her heart, it ached. Not just for the body in the bed, but for how quickly the world forgets. People whispered in the halls. He was too soft. Letting that woman influence him? Tried to invest in community clinics? What for? That's not the Halston way. Janelle had heard the rumors. Before the crash, Dominic had been working on a controversial project converting a portion of the Halston real estate holdings into affordable housing. Clinics, schools, charity. Camille had scoffed in the lounge one night. He called it legacy. I called it lunacy. But Janelle knew different. She'd seen the blueprints accidentally left on his nightstand, notes in his handwriting, phrases like dignity-driven development, in memory of mom, real impact. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a man trying to use his power for something more. And now that man was trapped, powerless, in a room that smelled of antiseptic and quiet ambition dying. Janelle sat by his bed and whispered, "I don't know what you were trying to build out there, Mr. Halston, but in here I'll help you fight. One day, one shift at a time." She didn't know that this private promise would soon pull her into a storm of money secrets and betrayal and force her to fight not just for a patient, but for a truth no one wanted to see. There were two women who walked the halls of the ICU every night. One moved quietly, her sneakers worn from double shifts, her badge tucked behind a plastic clip. The other swept through like wind in silk heels, clicking perfume, trailing grief perfectly curated for public viewing. Janelle Brooks, nurse. Camille Halston, wife. They never said much to each other, but every glance between them was a battle. Camille arrived each afternoon with fresh designer bags and new complaints. Why is the temperature so low in here? That nurse Janelle, is it? She's still assigned to Dominic? I just think, for someone of his status, we deserve a more polished environment. Janelle stayed professional, but inside she boiled, because while Camille scrolled through her phone, Janelle stayed late documenting every vital sign, adjusting Dominic's therapy schedule, humming softly as she turned him to prevent bed sores. And every night after the last check, she would call home and hear the sweetest voice. Mama Marcus would say, "Did Mr. D wake up today?" "Not yet, baby," she'd whisper. "But we're getting closer." Marcus didn't know the weight his mother carried, the exhaustion, the fear of missing rent, the way Camille's eyes followed her like she was less than just another disposable worker. But Janelle, she came from a line of women who endured. Her grandmother had cleaned houses in the same neighborhoods Camille now lunched in. Her mother had raised 3 children on a school janitor's salary. And now Janelle was here scrubbing her hands before entering a billionaire's room, while his wife doubted her humanity. It wasn't just class. It wasn't just race. It was the unspoken rule: women like Camille marry power. Women like Janelle serve it. But what Camille didn't see, what she would never understand, was that real power doesn't come from a last name or a wedding ring. It comes from love that shows up. Love that sacrifices. Love that tucks a child in, puts on her scrubs, and keeps fighting. Janelle didn't need anyone's validation, but she was about to earn something far more powerful: respect, truth, and a place in a man's life that no amount of money could buy. Because in that quiet room, where power and pride had collided, something was waking up. Not just Dominic, but a bond that no one saw coming. It didn't happen all at once, not in a dramatic explosion, but in small, sharp cuts, so quiet you almost missed the blood. The first time Janelle found Dominic's medication cart unlocked. She always double-checked, always, but someone had tampered with it. Nothing missing, just enough to raise suspicion, enough to make her question herself. Then came the schedule changes. She'd be assigned to Dominic's care, only to be swapped out last minute. No explanation, no warning. The new nurse, blonde, fresh-faced, never worked with trauma patients, but better suited, according to Camille. The final straw: one night Janelle walked into the ICU and found her patient with a different chart on his bedside. "Looks like a simple mistake," said the floor supervisor with a too-tight smile. But Janelle knew better. Mistakes don't repeat themselves. And this wasn't just negligence. It was a pattern, a campaign. She could feel it in the way some staff avoided eye contact, in the way Camille's lips twitched with satisfaction whenever Janelle was corrected. It wasn't overt. That's what made it dangerous. It was the invisible fog of racism dressed up in policy. It was the polite sabotage of a woman who smiled for the donors while poisoning everything behind closed doors. "You're emotional," they'd say. "You're imagining things. Don't make it about race." But it was about race and class. And the unbearable discomfort some people feel when a black woman holds power they can't explain away. Not a lawyer, not a CEO, just a nurse, but one who was slowly earning the trust of a man who'd never even opened his eyes. And that was enough to make people nervous. So Janelle stopped waiting for fairness. She documented everything. She created backup logs. She printed her own notes and brought them home. She didn't scream. She didn't break. She just did what black women have done for generations, survived with receipts. And as Camille plotted to erase her, Janelle stood taller, because she could feel something shifting. It started with a twitch in Dominic's hand, A flicker of a finger, a whisper of life fighting back. And if he was still in there, if he was still fighting, then so was she. It was a Tuesday night when the babysitter canceled again. Janelle didn't have a choice. She packed a bag of crayon snacks and Marcus's favorite Spider-Man blanket and whispered, "Just for a few hours, baby. Stay in the break room. Quiet, okay? But 6-year-olds are curious, and love doesn't always follow rules." When Janelle returned from checking another patient, she found him Marcus' tiny sneakers swinging beneath the hospital chair, sitting beside Dominic Halston's bed, holding his hand like it was the most normal thing in the world. And then Miss Harris said, "I couldn't play, 'cause my shoes looked busted, but I still beat everybody in tag." Marcus chattered, unaware of the wires and monitors. "Mama says real winners don't need fancy stuff." Janelle rushed forward. "Marcus," she hissed, heart pounding. "You can't." But then she saw it. The heart monitor had spiked slightly, but clearly. Dominic's brain activity screen pulsed with new life. It wasn't random. It was responsive. Her hand went to her mouth. "Keep talking, baby," she whispered. "Tell him more." So Marcus did. Every night shift that followed Janelle let him stop by quietly. A few minutes, a story, a joke, and every time, the readings rose. The room changed. The boy who didn't know what money meant, the woman they dismissed as too much heart, were reaching a man trapped inside his own silence. "You like my stories?" Mr. D. Marcus asked one night, resting his head on the edge of the bed. And that's when it happened. Dominic's hand moved. Not a twitch, a squeeze. Small, weak, but real. Janelle gasped. Tears welled up before she could stop them. She pressed the call button with shaking fingers, but in her heart, she knew something had broken through. Not medicine, not machines. Love. It happened fast. Too fast for someone like Janelle to prepare for. One moment she was adjusting Dominic's oxygen levels. The next two uniformed officers stood at the doorway, their faces unreadable. And behind them, wearing all white like a grieving angel, was Camille Halston. "That's her," Camille's said, voice trembling just enough. "She's the one stealing medication, endangering my husband." Janelle blinked, stunned. "I what?" The cuffs were cold. The hallway was colder. And the stares from nurses, doctors, even orderlies she'd shared lunches with, cut deeper than any blade. She didn't scream, didn't cry, but inside her heart was shattering. Marcus was home with a neighbor. Rent was due in 4 days. And now the woman who had done everything right, every double shift, every extra hour charting vitals, was paraded through the hospital like a criminal. In her holding cell she sat alone, a black woman, single mother, labeled thief before anyone asked her side. "This is what they see when they look at us," she whispered to herself. Not degrees, not compassion, just guilt. But she wasn't as alone as she thought, because across the city someone else was stirring. Dominic's hand moved again. The nurse on duty reported it, brain activity spiking, and when Janelle's name was mentioned in his presence, a tear slid down his cheek. Some things can't be faked. And while Camille gave tearful interviews to local media, painting herself the devoted wife betrayed by an obsessed, underqualified nurse, others were starting to whisper. Rose, Dominic's longtime housekeeper, saw the news. So did Benjamin Clark, the family's former legal advisor, who'd been quietly pushed out when Camille took over. And together they remembered something. Janelle had never tried to be anything but honest, and Camille had never stopped trying to erase everything Dominic believed in. By morning, Rose appeared at the jail with a lawyer. "We found the footage," she whispered through the glass, "of Camille and her business partner planting evidence in your locker. Dominic kept backups in his home office. I knew where to look." Janelle's knees nearly buckled. She was going home, but the damage had been done. Her license was under review. Her shifts were gone. Her name dragged through the dirt, but her spirit still standing. "They tried to bury me," Janelle whispered as she walked free. "But I'm a seed. I was meant to rise." And somewhere, in a hospital room she wasn't allowed to enter anymore, A man they all thought was lost was finally beginning to wake up. Have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do just because of how you look, where you're from, or what you stand for? Tell us in the comments. Your story matters too. The ICU felt different that morning. There were more flowers, more reporters hovering outside, and most noticeably, more tension. Because Dominic Halston had opened his eyes, just for a moment. But it was enough to send shockwaves through every hallway of the hospital. The man they said might never wake up was back. And his first word, Janelle, whispered, raspy, but clear. Not Camille, not board meeting, not even mom. He called for the one person they had worked so hard to erase. Camille stormed into his room an hour later, all crocodile tears and designer silk. Darling, thank God you're awake. But Dominic flinched. His eyes still adjusting to light, searched the room. Where is she? Who Camille asked, her voice brittle. The nurse, the one who stayed, the one who believed. He remembered. The soft voice reading to him. The small hand of a child wrapped around his. The presence that had anchored him in the dark. The doctors were stunned. His responses are unusually strong, said Dr. Chang. Neurologically speaking, this kind of recovery is rare. But Janelle, she wasn't there to see it. She was at home folding laundry she might not afford to wash next week, her son drawing quietly nearby, trying to hold on to dignity when the world had tried to strip it from her. Until the knock came, Rose, tears in her eyes. He said your name, and with that the tide began to turn, because for the first time since the accident, Dominic Halston wasn't silent. And the man who once made deals from the top of towers was now fighting with the only thing left to him. His truth. 3 weeks later, Dominic Halston stood with help before a room of flashing cameras. His suit hung looser on his recovering frame, but his voice, clear, steady, unapologetic. There's been a lot said about me, he began. About the accident, about my wife, about a nurse some tried to erase. He paused, looked toward the front row, where Janelle sat, her hands folded tightly, Marcus tucked beneath her arm. Let me tell you the truth, he continued. When I was unconscious, I heard things. I felt things, and one voice, one presence, never left my side. The press murmured. Camille, watching from afar, turned pale. Her name is Janelle Brooks. She's the reason I'm here, and moving forward, she'll be part of everything I build. The audience gasped. We're starting the Halston Brooks Foundation for affordable housing, for community clinics, for second chances. But that wasn't the real moment. That came when he turned to Marcus. Kneeling slowly, painfully, he smiled. And you, young man, told me stories that helped me find my way back. So here's mine. Real family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about love that refuses to give up. Janelle's eyes filled. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was something harder, richer, real. The kind of ending that doesn't need glass slippers, just courage. And the kind of love that shows up even when the whole world says it doesn't belong. If this story moved you, if you've ever had to fight for love, for truth, or just to be heard, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs a little reminder. Their worth isn't measured by status, but by heart.